Have you ever walked into a room and immediately noticed someone who barely said a word, yet somehow commanded everyone's attention? They were not loud. They were not trying to impress anyone. They were not dominating conversations or demanding recognition. Yet people seemed cautious around them, curious about them, and sometimes even intimidated by them. It is a fascinating psychological phenomenon. We often assume that intimidation comes from aggression, confidence, or social dominance. But in reality, some of the most intimidating people are also the quietest. Their presence speaks louder than their words. What is even more interesting is that many quiet people have no intention of intimidating anyone. In fact, they may see themselves as thoughtful, reserved, or simply private. Yet others often perceive them very differently. The reason lies in how the human mind interprets uncertainty. People naturally feel more comfortable when they can easily read someone. When a person openly shares their thoughts, emotions, and intentions, our brains relax because there are fewer unknowns. But when someone remains quiet, composed, and difficult to predict, the mind begins filling in the blanks on its own. This is where certain traits commonly found in quiet people can create a surprisingly intimidating effect. One of the most powerful traits is emotional control. Many people reveal their emotions instantly. They react when they are frustrated, excited, nervous, or offended. Their feelings become visible through their words, facial expressions, and behavior. Quiet individuals often process emotions internally before expressing them. They do not always react immediately. Psychologically, this creates an unusual dynamic. When someone remains calm under pressure, others struggle to gauge their emotional state. They do not know what that person is thinking or feeling. This uncertainty can trigger discomfort. Imagine a heated argument where one person becomes increasingly emotional while the other remains calm and collected. The calm individual often appears more powerful, even if they are not trying to be. Their emotional stability sends a subconscious message that they are not easily influenced by external events. This is not because they lack emotions. Often, quiet people feel emotions deeply. They have simply learned to observe their feelings rather than immediately act on them. Another trait that can intimidate others is careful observation. Quiet people often spend more time watching than speaking. While others are focused on expressing themselves, they are absorbing information. They notice patterns, inconsistencies, shifts in tone, and subtle emotional cues that many people overlook. Human beings are surprisingly sensitive to being observed. Deep down, most people want to control how others perceive them. When they sense that someone is paying close attention, it can create a feeling of vulnerability. Psychologically, being observed activates self-awareness. People begin wondering what the observer has noticed. They start questioning how they appear. This is why a quiet person who says very little can sometimes make others feel exposed without doing anything intentionally. The intimidating part is not what the quiet person says. It is the possibility that they know more than they are revealing. A third trait is independence from social validation. Many people unconsciously seek approval. They want to be liked, accepted, and included. This desire influences countless everyday decisions. Quiet individuals often appear less dependent on external validation. They do not always feel the need to impress people, explain themselves, or gain attention. They can sit comfortably in silence while others feel pressure to fill every empty moment. This can be intimidating because it challenges a fundamental social expectation. When someone does not seem desperate for approval, they become harder to influence. Traditional social rewards lose some of their power. Compliments, criticism, popularity, and status appear to affect them less. Psychologically, people tend to admire and fear what they cannot easily control. Independence creates a sense of personal strength, even when it is expressed quietly. Another trait is strong boundaries. Many quiet people spend significant time reflecting on their needs, values, and limits. As a result, they often become skilled at protecting their emotional energy. They may decline invitations without guilt. They may avoid toxic relationships. They may choose solitude over situations that drain them emotionally. For people who are accustomed to having unrestricted access to others, this can feel intimidating. Strong boundaries communicate self-respect. They send a subtle message that a person's time, attention, and emotional resources are valuable. Psychologically, boundaries force people to confront something uncomfortable. Not everyone is available on demand. Individuals who struggle with rejection may interpret healthy boundaries as coldness or intimidation. In reality, boundaries are often a sign of emotional maturity rather than emotional distance. A fifth trait is comfort with solitude. Many people fear being alone because solitude forces them to face their thoughts. Without distractions, unresolved emotions often rise to the surface. Quiet people frequently develop a different relationship with solitude. Instead of viewing it as loneliness, they may experience it as restoration. This creates an inner stability that others can sense. Psychologically, people are often drawn to those who seem complete on their own. Yet this same quality can also be intimidating. Someone who genuinely enjoys their own company appears less dependent on relationships for their identity. This does not mean they do not value connection. It simply means their sense of self is not entirely built upon external approval. There is something powerful about a person who can stand alone without feeling diminished. Another trait is thoughtful communication. Because quiet people tend to speak less, they often place greater value on the words they choose. Rather than speaking impulsively, they may spend time evaluating what they want to say. As a result, when they do speak, people often pay attention. Psychologically, scarcity increases perceived value. We naturally assign greater importance to things that appear limited. When someone talks constantly, their words can blend into the background. But when someone rarely speaks, every statement feels more significant. This can create an intimidating effect because people know those words were likely considered carefully. A single observation from a thoughtful person can carry more weight than a long speech from someone else. Their silence creates anticipation, and anticipation creates influence. The final trait is self-awareness. Many quiet individuals spend a great deal of time examining their inner world. They reflect on their emotions, motivations, fears, and experiences. This self-awareness often leads to greater psychological depth. When people understand themselves, they become less reactive to external judgments. They no longer need constant reassurance about who they are because they have already done much of that work internally. Psychologically, self-awareness creates authenticity. Authentic people tend to appear grounded and difficult to manipulate. For individuals who are still searching for validation or identity, encountering someone who possesses a strong sense of self can feel intimidating. Not because the self-aware person is superior, but because they represent a level of inner clarity that many people are still trying to develop. What makes all of these traits so interesting is that none of them involve aggression, dominance, or superiority. The intimidation comes from something much deeper. It comes from certainty. Not certainty about having all the answers, but certainty about one's values, emotions, and identity. When people encounter someone who is comfortable with silence, comfortable with solitude, comfortable with boundaries, and comfortable with themselves, it disrupts many of the insecurities that drive everyday social behavior. And that disruption can feel intimidating. If you have spent your life being told you are too quiet, too reserved, or too private, it may be worth considering another perspective. Your quietness may not be a weakness at all. It may reflect strengths that others immediately recognize, even if they do not fully understand them. The goal is not to become intimidating. The goal is to become authentic. True confidence is rarely loud. It does not need to announce itself. It does not need constant attention or validation. It simply exists. And perhaps that is the deeper lesson hidden within quiet people. Their strength often comes not from controlling others, but from understanding themselves. The more you learn to trust your own thoughts, respect your own boundaries, regulate your emotions, and embrace your authentic nature, the less you will depend on external approval to feel worthy. And while some people may find that intimidating, others will find it inspiring. Because the quietest form of power is not the ability to influence a room. It is the ability to remain fully yourself, regardless of who enters it.